Hey, everybody. My name is Brian Collins. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at AngelHack, and I'm super excited to be presenting to you guys the call for code application, what you guys need to do to be successful in your application, a little bit about the video pitch. Basically, I just want to answer all the questions you might have about how you actually submit. It's been a huge program. We've had tens of thousands of people apply. I've been involved from the beginning, and it's been really cool seeing you guys come through the Slack, come through all the different pieces. Just a quick heads up at the beginning. If you have not joined the Slack group, make sure you do. If you need that link, once again, you can reach out to us at AngelHack, info@angelhack.com, and we'll get you that Slack link. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the application form. I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what they are actually going to be submitting and how that submission works. And then I'm going to give you a couple of tips on what to do for one portion specifically, which is the video pitch, that 3-minute video pitch. So what we're going to do first is this screen that you see here is exactly what you're going to see when you go to submit your submission on the YouNoodle link. If you still don't have the YouNoodle link, again, shoot us an email, info@angelhack.com. We can get that to you. But moreover, we can also make sure that you guys get the Slack channel, which is where it is pinned. So that'll be the last time I talk about that. This is what the application form is going to look like. And I want to go through piece by piece what all these different pieces are, how important they are, well, really what we're looking for before we go through the different pieces. First up, your team name. You got to have a team name. Please don't make it your name. That just makes it confusing for us and the judges as we're going through the different pieces. So we do need a specific team name, your project name, for example, of what it is that you guys have actually built. So whatever you're calling that group, that's what we want to know. We'll need your teammate names and emails. Now, it's important to note that these first two pieces, specifically the names and emails, those are only being shared with us, the AngelHack team. We'll be contacting you if we need more information, if we have questions from the judges, and as well, if you win. This is how we contact you. But the judges don't get this information. So the only people who are getting this are your friendly AngelHack organizers. Now let's get into the actual real application. First, we need a high-level pitch. This is your quick 7-word, and it's only 7, high-level rundown of what your project is. This helps the judges. Reminder that we've had tens of thousands of people apply. We have hundreds of applications that have already been started, and we're expecting quite a few more. So this is a great way to grab the attention of your judge. So keep in mind, especially those first few rounds of judging, these judges are going to see a ton of different applications. So the easiest way to ensure that you're doing the right thing here is to grab their attention with a really interesting, really cool 7-word high-level pitch. And I think this is something that a lot of people push to the side, but it's a really important thing to fully kind of grab that attention here. Then we're giving you the full describe your solution in more detail. You have 500 words to do this. This is your really dig into and help us understand exactly what the program is. Now, I am going to flag something. Some people, and we're going to talk more about the video pitch later, some people just put the script of what they want to say in the video pitch as they're describing your solution. So they're the exact same thing. I would not suggest doing that. I think you're wasting the ability to being able to offer a lot more in-depth pieces. What I would think about for the in-depth description of the solution, and what I've seen to be most successful, is when you really start to think about what are the pieces that, when you're doing the video, a lot of the video should focus on the demo. We'll talk more about that later. But other pieces for this description should really be around things maybe you don't see in the demo, maybe you don't see in a quick run through. So I would actually suggest that you build out your video demo first and come back to this section. And I think once we go through the video demo, it'll be a little bit more self-explanatory as we go through this. Solution roadmap. One of the big portions of this program is that the judges really want to know, especially the final judges really want to know, that you're going to be continuing to work on your solution well after the virtual hackathon is over. Once the challenge is finished, we want to know that you guys are really working on this after the fact. So as a portion of that, we want to see some type of a solution roadmap. Where are you? What have you accomplished? And where are you going from here? Now, that roadmap can be in a variety of different formats. It can be a variety of different pieces, but just something to keep in mind that it's really important to do. And depending on the type of application, the type of program, the type of product that you've built out, it can be in a variety of different formats. In a perfect world, everybody would submit this as a PDF. That makes it easiest for the judges if everything was in one file format. But if you're building a mobile application, it's pretty easy to put things as a JPEG and make it into a PDF. If you're building something more blockchain oriented, for example, it might be harder to showcase this in a visual format. But as much as you can, we want you to think about the solution roadmap as a visual format for showing people where you were, where you are, and where you want to go with the product. Next up, we need the link to your code repo. Now, this portion is very important because it covers two pieces. One is one of the first rounds of judging, where the judges are going to go through and check your code to ensure that you have at least one working IBM service, an IBM cloud service. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then the other piece is if you're actually selected to win, our teams will go through and they'll actually take a very close look at your code to ensure that there's no foul play. This is what the code repo is for. But one of the biggest mistakes that people make is sometimes we get a private code repo. It may not be hosted on GitHub, but it's hosted on some other repo server or private server. That's fine if you want to keep your repo private. I fully understand. But you need to give us access. So if you're creating a private repo, we need to have access. And if that means giving us your ID and password, that's one way of doing it. If you can make it just password protected, we need to have the password and it needs to be in this section. So typically the best way to do this is you have the link, you do a couple of spaces, and then you write out the actual password right here in this section. So that's another really important piece to know. It's really important for us to have this. And that takes us to the video pitch. Now, we're going to talk more about the video pitch later, but same rules apply with the code repo. If you're going to make your video pitch private, whether it's a YouTube link or a Vimeo link, and it needs a password, that's fine. But make sure that you take the password and you drop it again in here. So drop the link, hit the space bar a couple of times, and drop the password in as well. And just make sure you note in both of these sections that this is the password. So password, : here's what it is. It's one of the biggest mistakes we get because if I have to reach out to you, if our team has to reach out to you, it's going to slow down the judges. And depending on your turnaround time, you may be disqualified because we don't hear back from you in time. We have a very tight amount of time to judge all these. We only have about a week. So it's a really tight period. And because it's a global hackathon, everybody's in different time zones. So do yourself a favor, follow the instructions, make sure you include the password if you're going to make these private. The last piece that's really important is what IBM cloud services did you use? Remember again, you have to include at least one cloud service. So if you're going to include one, make sure that you list it out here, because when the judges go through, the technical judges go through that first round of judging, where they're really just looking to see, was an IBM service actually utilized and is it deployed in the repo? What they're going to do is they're going to look at the cloud services that you've listed, that are listed here, and then they're going to go to your repo and make sure that they're listed out. So if you're listing something here, it needs to be listed in your repo. It needs to be shown as working. That is the first step of the judging process before the judges come back and look at all the different judging criteria. And if you don't meet that, you won't even make it to the second round. So that's it. Let's kind of go through this again from the top. But we need your team name. That's your guys' fun team name. We need the teammates' names and emails. Again, these two sections are really for the organizers, myself and our team here, to ensure that we can reach out to you guys if we need anything. High-level pitch. I mentioned this before, but I think this is one of the most important pieces to differentiate your team, especially after judges will have seen hundreds and hundreds of submissions. How do you make yourself different? How do you capture their attention? And how do you briefly explain what it is you built this out? Describe your solution in more detail. I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to reference it one more time. I would build your video pitch first. We're going to talk about the video pitch in just a second. And then describe your solution in more detail so that you can supplement what's already in your video. Then we're going to do the solution roadmap. Again, we really want to see, where were you? What have you accomplished so far? Where do you want to go? Depending on what you're building, this can be in different formats. You'll be allowed to include basically any file format that you want to build. But if possible, try and make it a PDF. It's easiest for us judges to go through all this. The link to the repo, if you're going to make it a private repo, we need to know what the password is. Again, the video pitch as well. If you need to make it a private video pitch, make sure that the password is there. Finally, what IBM cloud services did you use? Make sure you list out all the ones that you used. But most importantly, make sure you're not listing out something that didn't actually get listed in your repo, because the tech team will be testing that. And that's it. It's a fairly straightforward application, but from a timing perspective, it's going to take you a few hours. And especially the video pitch is going to take you probably a few days to nail. And let's talk about the video pitch for a moment, because there's some really important things that I want to present to you guys and to talk to you about what is going to make you the most successful when doing this. So we're going to talk about 7 different steps towards success for a video pitch, a virtual video pitch. How do you differentiate yourself? And I cannot overstate enough the importance of the video pitch. Most judges, myself included, the first thing we look at is the video pitch. And we base most of our scores off of that. The most important piece of the video pitch is going to be the demo. We're going to talk about that later. I'm going to walk you guys through how to actually format all of this, how to work on timings for all this, all these different pieces. So let's get started. First and foremost, I'm going to walk you through the easiest rule, but it's the most important rule. This is a really amazing virtual hackathon program. It's Call for Code. It's focused on solving and fighting disaster relief efforts around the world through a variety of different things. You've decided to give up some time to work on this program. You've decided to take a step back and really focus on why you want to give back in some way through what you're building out. You need to showcase that passion in your video pitch. So no matter what you're doing and no matter what you're writing out, make sure that that passion really comes through. Because if we as the judges can't seem to see you being passionate about it, we can't get passionate about it. That does not mean that you need to go through and have balloon drops happening and confetti and all that stuff, or just kind of woohoo, like screaming and yelling at the camera. That's not passion. That's just excitement. Not talking about exciting stuff. We're talking about being passionate and really showcasing that passion all the way through. So we start that as rule number 1, because if you can really dig deep and think about that, it's going to be the most effective way for you to really ensure that your entire pitch is really, really strong. Number 2, you need to think about your pitch early. Now, the good news is, if you're listening to this, you probably have already accomplished this, but I mentioned it earlier. I've found when building out video pitches, both for myself, but also in working with other teams from many of the other virtual hacks that AngelHack and IBM run, that the longer that you can start building out your pitch, the better. The best teams that I've seen from virtual hackathons tend to work on their video pitch for about 3 to 4 days before getting that final recording. The earlier you can start thinking about the pitch, the more you can start putting into it, the better. Rule number 3, this is called the 3 golden points. So this is how you can actually build out the most effective video pitch. What I mean by that is you only have 3 minutes to pitch. How in the world can you fully and successfully present your ideas in only 3 minutes? Well, it works like this. Generally speaking, we suggest taking 45 seconds to work on your problem and solution statements. What exactly are you trying to solve, and how have you solved it? And that needs to be the first thing in your video pitch. What exactly are you trying to solve, and how have you solved it? A minute and a half on the demo. This is the most important thing. We want to see what you built. We want to see it in real time. We want to really be walked through everything that you guys have built and what it is. A minute and a half on the demo, a full user flow if you can do it, a real use case if you could walk us through. We really want to see that whole thing. So we get about a minute and a half. Finally, 45 seconds on next steps. Where are you going from here? What do you want to build out? 45 seconds on problem solution, a minute and a half on the demo, 45 seconds on next steps. And if you think about it and you think of the submission form that we just went over, you'll realize that the video pitch is really covering multiple different portions, at least as a starter period, of the different portions of the submission itself. The problem and solution, that's one portion of the full description, the 500-word description that we talked about earlier. The demo, I mean, that's just the real version of the code repo, the actual user flow and all of that. And then the next steps, that's your roadmap. So really what you're doing with the video pitch is you're focusing in on each of the different pieces of the submission and giving us a teaser of what we're going to find with the rest of your submission. Rule number 4, the importance of next steps. So I mentioned those 45 seconds, but I cannot, as I mentioned earlier, I cannot overstate it enough. The judges, and especially those final judges, are really going to be looking to see what projects are actually looking to be built out beyond just this program, beyond just this hackathon. Next steps are the number one areas judges have questions, and you really want to spend your time doing your research and making sure you understand. The most common questions that judges have about next steps that you're going to want to see if you can cover during your video pitch, and definitely mentioning during your description or even your roadmap, is how is this project different from other projects in the market? In other words, competitive analysis. What makes this business model different? How will it make money? If it won't make money, how is it going to be a sustainable concept in the future? Essentially, the next steps is idea validation. It's understanding and proving that this fits in the market, that it's viable, and that it's valuable, as well as it's scalable and it has impact. So those are the things that we really want you to think about with the next steps. And that's why, even though we mentioned it in that earlier slide, it's so important to have an entire slide dedicated on the importance of next steps. Rule number 5, do 2 things at once. You've got full control of your video demo. It is totally okay for you to be showing one thing on the screen and talking about something else. A really good example of this is really take a look at your user flow. Spend time going through your entire demo over and over and over again until you nail it as much as you can. I did a video demo a few months ago where I spent probably 2 days just going through the user flow over and over and over, answering any questions that I had to ensure that when I actually recorded it, I knew what, when I show it, does not need explanation and what does. Because if I'm going through a login screen, for example, that might be a great time for me to talk through something else. That might be a great time for me to talk through a different portion of the program, a different portion of what it is that we're actually working on. Everybody's seen a login screen. Another option that I see a lot in demos is something involving maps, for example. Something that, putting in and searching for a map or showcasing, let's say you were doing a disaster relief piece where you were showcasing on a map all the different SOS calls that you'd receive, just as one example. If you were doing that, the map is fairly self-explanatory. So the key is, what else can you explain? What isn't self-explanatory? Is this a time to talk about your backend? Is this a time to talk about your business model? Is this a time to talk about the things that they won't see from the demo? Rule number 5, the best demos do 2 things at once. Rule number 6, anticipate questions. And that reminds me, I probably should have led with this, but if anybody has any questions, drop them in the chat. I'll switch over to them at the end of this as well. So feel free to just start dropping them there, and I'm going to do a little Q&A at the end, just in case anybody has any questions. And we're just about there. Number 6 out of 7, so nearly done. Anticipate questions. What we mean by this is, once you have the first draft of your demo, you want to share it with people. You want to share it with the people on your team, obviously, but you also want to share it with people who maybe only slightly know what you're working on or don't know it at all. You want to know what questions that they ask when you put it together, because you're going to want to update your demo again after you hear those questions to make sure you're answering it. Or, and this goes back to what we were talking about with the form, answering those questions in the description itself. So the point is, you do one version of the demo, you pass it around to people, you get their feedback, you build out another version of the demo based on their feedback, answering as many of those questions as you can. And if you absolutely can't answer certain questions, you may want to think about making your description less as a full description and more as some type of an FAQ. If you're getting lots of questions about the product, that could be a really easy way to fill out that section as well. So a couple of things to keep in mind, but anticipating questions is incredibly important, because remember, you're not really going to get a chance to answer any questions from the judges. They need to have all of the information at their fingertips in order to really effectively ensure that they're presenting and creating the best projects. And finally, rule number 7, practice. Practice, 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 practice. This is going to take time. There's a bunch of prizes on the line. There's some really cool stuff. And this is a really important program. This is real, viable, valuable stuff that we're working on. So you're going to want to put time into this. I mentioned it before. I'll say it again. 3 to 4 days is the average time I know that some of our top virtual hackathon teams have done this in the past. So I just want to highlight that. You're going to want to practice. So let's go through those again from the top to the bottom. Number 7 is practice, practice. You're going to want to make sure that you put the time in and the effort in. Anticipate those questions, because you will not have a chance to really answer questions from the judges themselves. So you want to make sure that you're giving it out to people who might have good questions for you, and then taking those same pieces and incorporating them into your demo or adding them into the description. Rule number 5, doing 2 things at once. This is you spending time looking at your demo, really focusing in and ensuring that you know your demo so well, you know what you need to talk about to explain and what is self-explanatory, what else you can fill in during that minute and a half that you go over your demos. Next steps are incredibly important. Cannot overstate them enough for the 3rd time today. And the reason they're so important is this number 1 area is that judges have questions. So you want to make sure that you're taking your time, you're doing your research, and that you understand where you fit in the market, how are you viable, how are you valuable, how are you impactful, how are you scalable. Number 3 golden points, 45 seconds on problem and solution, a minute and a half on the demo, and 45 seconds on next steps. Thinking about your pitch early, because you know that it's going to take you much more than just a couple of hours or a quick afternoon recording to make this effective. And finally, number 1, remember why you got started on this program at all, to be passionate, to make sure that you're focusing on the real reason that you wanted to focus on this, the exciting thing that you're actually building out. And with that, guys, I'm going to switch over on my side. You shouldn't see it, but if anybody has any questions, start dropping them into the chat for anybody who's joined. Otherwise, I'll start answering as I go. I do got one question. Great. Is it good to showcase earlier work in the domain in the video for about a minute? So I think, Samha, thanks for the question. Do me a favor and let me know if this doesn't fully answer it. But essentially, if you're asking, should you be showcasing earlier work towards this product? So for example, early stages of this work. I wouldn't include that in the actual video demo. I would include that in the roadmap. I would really showcase how in the roadmap this has come along. Here's what version 1 looked like, or here's what version 0.1 looked like, this is what 0.2 looked like, et cetera, et cetera. I would not include it in the video demo and that portion of the pitch, because that most effective way that you can build something out there is you really want to show what you finally built on. Use the roadmap section to show the different iterations and the different levels. And I think that's going to be the most effective way for you to do that. So hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, let me know. Just drop it in the chat as well. I'll wait a second to see if there's any other questions that pop into the chat. Is there a recommended format or resolution for the video? Any recommended tools? Daniel, good question. There's no recommended format or resolution, although the one thing I'll say is if somehow you're able to be recording at a very high resolution, maybe don't shoot in 4K or anything along those lines. We just don't know what all the judges' devices are going to be at, and some of them might not be able to handle that. Again, I would highly suggest just using a YouTube or a Vimeo link for this, whatever you're most comfortable with as far as the actual distribution. On the tools that you guys might want to use, what I find to be most effective is kind of a mix between, you are going to want to edit this, I think is probably really important to say as well. So this is not going to be something that you're just going to do a 3-minute pitch with one screen share that you're then just going to record and speak through the whole thing. You're going to want to do a screen share recording, for example, for your demo and really walk through that. Another really helpful tip, get a basic get a basic microphone that you can plug into your computer so you can have a slightly better sound quality. Quick, easy tip that really ups your production level. Do that as a screen share that you can then record. If you're on Mac, it's actually built in to your QuickTime player. If you have a PC, I think there's also an option there as well. And there's a ton of free tools online that you can use, which is really simple. But the flip side of that is when it comes to that's for the screen sharing side. When it comes to your going to the outside of the demo, so the problem solution or the next steps, it really depends on what you want to showcase. If you want to just for next steps showcase your roadmap, you'll kind of walk through your roadmap, that's fine. Maybe a screen sharing piece works well there. If you really want to do more of an interview style process with your teams, which I've seen before as well, make sure that you're looking up at least basic lighting instruments and basic video recording pieces, and never have more than one person speaking to camera at a time. There's a really good tip for you guys. But my best practice would be to definitely do a screen share recording straight from your computer with a decent microphone for the demo, and then be editing in the other two pieces as you guys see appropriate. So I'm going to leave it to you guys. If you know your projects best, you know how to best showcase the problem and solution, how to best showcase the next steps. So I really want you to think about that. We got another question here: is roadmap and architecture map with each technical updates? It can be. It absolutely can be. That's a good way to walk through it. Again, it's hard to, I don't want to make a single defining answer because it's so dependent upon the product that you're building out. If the product that you're really building is a very simple tool, for example, that ties into a larger business sense, then the roadmap there may be much more built out on a business side, on a business model side, for example, and where you guys plan to go, your customer acquisition plan, pieces like that. If what you're building is a much more technical product and really a product base, then utilizing a roadmap as an architecture map is good too. But I'm going to argue the best way to do this is actually to combine both. Being able to showcase a technical roadmap and a business plan roadmap. And again, a lot of you are, I know this from people I've talked to in the Slack and some early submissions I've seen coming through YouNoodle. A lot of you are focusing on more charity works or possibly making these into charities or nonprofits. That's fine. But just make sure that you're showcasing how are you going to get this into the market? How do you get this into the hands of the people that you need to use it? It doesn't need to be revenue generating. It just needs to showcase how you're going to get it into users' hands. So, Tom Hunt, to your second question on the roadmap, it can absolutely be a roadmap as an architecture map, but my best practice would be to include it as both an architecture map inclusion, so technical side, the technical roadmap, as well as some type of business roadmap. How are you going to grow and scale from there? I'm going to give it one more second to see if there's any questions. I'm not seeing anything popping up on the chat. So with that, folks, I want to thank everybody for coming on. Really appreciate it. Again, if you guys have any questions at all, anything that pops up, info@angelhack.com, or if you're in the Slack, drop the questions in the Slack and we'll go from there. I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank IBM again for helping to sponsor and support this amazing program. We're super excited about it. And folks, we're coming up to the last really week, a little bit more, but really week before we officially close this out. So thanks everybody. Good luck. And once again, if you have any questions, let us know.